I'll be your instructor today. My name is Morgan Robertson. I'm a certified Salesforce developer and Sales Cloud consultant here at Kyazma. I've been with the company for about 2 years now. And one of the things we've had a lot of requests for recently is work with REST resources and REST APIs within Salesforce. So today I'm going to kind of give you the guided tour. We're going to build a simple endpoint, be able to connect into it, and then hopefully have time left at the end to answer any of your questions, and make sure that this is as helpful and informative as we can make it. This will be recorded and available on our new YouTube channel after the broadcast. So if at any time you need to review, please feel free to do so there. This will also be coming up in a blog post shortly on kyazmallc.com /blog. If you have any questions or issues during the webinar, feel free to either use the chat pane or the questions. I prefer to answer questions as they come up. If you're not understanding something, or if you'd like some more clarification, I'd be happy to do so. Simply chat or use the questions, and we'll work through those issues as they come up. Alrighty. So here we are within Salesforce. The first thing I'd like to discuss is a few principles of RESTful services. REST has become increasingly popular because of its flexibility and its ease of use. You're not dependent upon WSDLs or XML documents as you are with SOAP services, and yet you still get the speed and efficiency that you would from having a stateless transfer. REST works primarily with JSON and XML as data types back and forth, as well, and is in fact stateless. So whatever you request will always be returned the same no matter what. There are some services out there that, as you request, the server will actually keep track. I've sent this page of data, I need to send the next. REST APIs and most SOAP APIs won't do that. The client actually has to say, I want page 1, 2, 3, or 4, and has to remember on their side where they're at and what they need next, which makes it a lot easier for those hosting the services, and allows the end user some flexibility to make sure that they get all the data that they need. So the first thing that we need to tackle within Salesforce to build our API is, how do we log in? The primary methods used by Salesforce when interacting with the APIs are through OAuth flows. There are quite a number of these for different times. There's one that's a mobile flow. There's one that's a web server flow. The one that I'm going to use today is the password flow. This is most often used for 2 systems that are completely automated, pulling information to and from without user interaction. So in order to set those up, first of all, you'll need your Salesforce username, password, and security token. In replacement of that security token, you can also whitelist the IP address that you're working off of. If you have not gotten your security token, if you go under My Personal Information, it's here, Reset My Security Token. It will send you a link. It's a 20 to 30 character string that you append to your password, which verifies that you are in fact you. The next thing we need to do is set up a remote application. These have been recently renamed within Salesforce to connected apps. So under App Setup, Create Apps, we have this Connected Apps section. I've got one existing here, but we'll go ahead and create a new one. We need to name the connected app. Give it a proper API name, and then a contact email address. So if anyone ever has issues, or they can report abuse there. We're going to use OAuth for our authentication. Now, in this case, I'm going to select the giving full access, which means that all of the permissions that I have, this service will have. However, it doesn't necessarily need to be that way. One of the benefits of OAuth is that you can assign a portion of the rights to that connected app. So in other words, I could say, well, I can access Visualforce pages, or I can access just the very most basic information about you and keep that up to date. Pull it, push it, that type of thing. The next in OAuth is also the callback URL. What this does is that when I make a request to the authentication server, it posts some information to the application server where the data resides, saying that this person is now authorized. And in our case, because we're just connecting into Salesforce, they have a default that we use for that. Let me go ahead and get it for you. The login.salesforce/services OAuth2/callback. This processes the request on their side. We'll go ahead and save that. That's what's required to connect that. What this is now going to give you is your consumer key and your consumer secret. Your consumer key is public. It is how Salesforce recognizes this connected app over others. Your consumer secret is, of course, secret, and is used as a secondary password. Now, I've been asked before, why not just create one connected app and allow it to continue on? Just use it with all the systems available. And while that is perfectly valid, what we lose is the ability to vary permissions dependent upon the connected app. And second of all, we lose the ability to track which connected application was making the changes. So if I have two other systems that are updating data in Salesforce, I can say this data was updated from party A and the other from party B. All right. So let's go ahead and create our login request in Salesforce. In order to do that, we need to go to all the parameters in there. Login.salesforce.com services OAuth2 token. Now, as you may have seen, we're going to have a number of parameters that need to go into this post. Here we need to identify a grant type. This is where you identify the flow that you're using. In this case, we're using a password flow. Next, you will need your client ID, which is the ID of the connected app. You will need your client secret, which we will now retrieve. We will need our username, URL included, of course. And then lastly, the password, which, along with our security token, is located there. So we have all of our parameters in. We'll go ahead and send this. It hasn't run the gauntlet yet. Let me go ahead and update this with one that was working previously. There we go. It may take a few minutes for it to come through and set up the services on the Salesforce end. I created this one last night, and it's, as you can see, it's working. The response here is JSON. We get the instance URL that we need to call, as well as this authorization token. This token has an idle time of 1 hour or an expiration time of 24 hours. If you're using it, you can use it up to 24 hours. If it lies idle for 60 minutes, it will expire and you need to refresh that token. You can refresh the token from client applications using some of the other flows, such as the mobile flow or the web server flow. For the password flow, you actually just need to request a new token. Alright, so now we've got our login token. This gives our app the ability to access any of the resources in Salesforce. Any of the standard SOAP APIs, any of the standard REST APIs, and our custom REST API, which we'll be creating now. So now that we've got this connected app, let's come and we're going to develop our own REST class. First thing to do is annotate the class REST resource. We need to also give it a URL mapping. And the URL mapping has to start with a / and needs to be somewhat descriptive. So in this case, we're going to use REST webinar /accounts. Now, I can use wildcards in this URL mapping. I can use them here in the middle, as long as they're bounded by the 2 /, or I can use it as the last character. When Salesforce goes through to match these REST resources, it takes an exact match, and then it takes additional matches with wildcards and takes the longest one first. That's how it's going to sort through these. So this will be a catch-all for anything that has to do with an account. It needs to be a global class. And we can do it with or without sharing. If you do it without sharing, it will run in system mode. There will be no data permissions prevented on this. So if you're trying to pass Salesforce security review, make sure that you use the with sharing keyword, which means that it runs with the permissions of the connected app. Now within here, we are going to create our first method. You'll have to annotate the method HTTP GET. There is a annotation for GET, POST, PATCH, PUT, and DELETE. These are, you can use one of each per Apex class. So in this case, I cannot put 2 GET methods in the same. I would need to create a new class with a new REST resource with a more specific URL mapping that would prioritize the other GET over this one in that case. So here, static, we're just going to return a list of accounts. And we'll make the request. And finally, simply return the list. Alright, let's come back to Postman. Now, a few things change on this next one. First of all, we have to remember to call our specific instance instead of simply login. So we're going to NA17 and remove all of those parameters. Use a get post type, and we need to add a header. This header is an authorization heading. And the value is, get a valid token. The value of the token is bearer space and then the authorization token that you were returned in that login. Let me go ahead and NA17 services. Instead of going to the OAuth service, we're going to go Apex REST. And Kyazma, next is the name of our class. So REST class, and it, not the name of the class, it's the URL mapping, I apologize. So Apex REST, REST webinar /accounts /account. We can leave this blank, we can use any value here. We call get account. We'll put a .json on the end, indicating to Salesforce that what we want returned is JSON format. We'll go ahead and send that, and we get the JSON listing of all accounts in the database. If we were to switch this to .xml, you can see we get it appropriately returned. Now, one of the things to remember when you're using XML return types is that there are some things that are hard to represent in XML, such as lists of lists or collections that aren't mapped by ID. In those cases, you'll need to have a JSON return type, which is my preference as well. Now let's go ahead and returning all of your accounts is useful, but perhaps we want to be a little bit more specific. Perhaps we want to pass an ID in, so we can only get the information about a specific account. So in this case, we can use the REST context. And the REST context variable has the request and response objects embedded in it. So in this case, the request.params.getID. If that's present, we're going to create just for that account. Otherwise, we'll return all accounts. Go ahead and save that. Come here and put a parameter on it. So in this case, we should return to send that. And you can see that we've limited what we've done down to those only. So next, let's work through an Apex post. I'm going to bring that code up here. If you'll notice, I'm simply returning the objects. Salesforce will actually take care of the serialization and deserialization for you, assuming you have specific formats. JSON it will do for you. XML, there's some namespacing that needs to be done. So here we're just going to return a string. So let's come here and change this to post. I need to add our content type header. The application JSON, or application XML if you prefer. And in this case, and goes our company name. Consulting, and the company phone number. Now, as we send this off, we see that we get a successful response. This is the ID of the account that was just created. Let's jump back here, and we're going to replace that ID there. You can see here we've created it with the appropriate values, and it even gives us the URL where we can pull the full record down. This is one of the Salesforce standard REST APIs, services data v30, S objects, and so forth. So I can actually take this, so inclined, and place it here, and this will return our full data set about that account. Now let's come back, and let's say, for example, that we want to adjust some of the values on our response. In that same Rex context, I have access to the response, and I can set a custom status code. So, for example, instead of just a standard 200 response, I want to send a 201 indicating that there was a record created. We'll go ahead and save that. And change that to identify appropriately. We now see that we received the appropriate status code. So if there is need to adjust those types of items, we have full control to do that within Salesforce. Now, passing in strings and that is quite useful. However, what happens when you want to send complex data types? I've got lots of different information that I need to send. And in that case, we can go ahead and define those classes within this same affix class. So here I've got an account contact object, and I've got an ID set. So this shows how we return both, accept and return those. And I'm going to do an HTTP put method. Now, there's nothing that's going to hold you to use the correct method type, a get over a patch over a post over a put. However, when working with REST APIs, it's best to stick with the actual annotation. Put is an upsert operation. It will insert or update the data on the server. So here we're going to accept an account record and a contact record, save those, create our ID set, and return those values. So we'll go ahead and save that. Now here in Postman, we're going to change our method to put, and put in our JSON object. And you'll notice that this will actually fail. It's looking for the name AC when it's parsing this JSON. And so we actually need to create this as its own object. I'm going to go and put that in there. give it a type name AC, and define AC as the object that we're inserting. Now when we go ahead and send that, we'll know that it didn't recognize company name as a standard column on the account object, and so therefore then it was parsed. I could use custom fields just by simply putting in the __C with the API name. Go ahead and send those. And now we've got our related account and contact IDs. Let's do another one. And this time, I'm going to include the ID values. This will show the upsert operation, where we're simply taking these values and updating them appropriately down here. So in case that this number is wrong, we can adjust it accordingly, and we'll see that reflected in the account record on Salesforce. I can go 2, and we see that it's updated that item there. Now, that was showing me with a user-defined class with JSON, which is my personal preference. If you do end up using XML for this, there's one thing to be aware of, and that's that when you're using user-defined classes, you have to namespace your value in such a way. You use a def tag, and then you give it this, and give it your class name. So we've named it AC. That's equal to let's post the reference. It is I lost the reference. It's services schema, and then the name of the class, which we named REST class. And then that's the form of it. So hold on just a moment, I can find the exact format. There it is. HTTP soap.sforce.com/schemas /class/ and then the name of your class. Within that def tag, you'll then use that namespace AC colon A. As your next tag, and embedded in there would be your name value, etc. So that's the one thing to watch out for with XML and using those user-defined classes. As you can see, JSON is quite a bit easier to use in those cases, if at all possible. Some of the resources that you can use to continue and further finding out more about REST APIs inside of Salesforce. there's a on the developerforce.com, they have a full REST developer's guide. Some of the information is slightly scattered throughout there, but it is all there. Additionally, you can also look at the Apex Code Developer's Guide under invoking Apex and web services. It's fairly concise in that location as well. Now, we've covered quite a bit. We've been able to log in, get our access token, and create several methods that we've been able to interact with, push and pull data, update data, and even pass in custom objects. Now, I'd like to open it up for any questions you may have about using these REST resources, or any other questions that you may have. The question we have is, do the REST calls count against the API limit in Salesforce? Yes, they do. For every API call, what you would use one for login and one for each additional request. Of course, using outbound, if you're calling out from Salesforce using REST, any outbound call doesn't count against the limit. These are specifically inbound calls into Salesforce. Are there any other questions that users may have? Let's see. Let's go ahead and open up Russell. What question do you have? Russell, is there a question that you had? Okay. Are there any other questions that I can be of assistance with today? Let's see, Scott, I'll go ahead and take you off mute. What's your question?
So, question, if you make a REST call to a class and more than 200 records are going to be returned, how do you then query Salesforce for the next chunk of data?
So,
does it return everything?
So if you are returning, so you have a limit of 50,000 records returned in a single operation, but you can't make more than 200 SOAP calls in a single operation. So if you're trying to return 50,001 records, what you'd need to do is accept a page character in your API. So for example, if this is page 1, accept the first, put a limit on your SQL query of 50,000. To return page 2, what you need to do is use the SQL offset keyword, which will skip a certain number of rows before taking the next chunk. So for example, if you wanted to return in chunks of 100 and page that, if they requested page 3, then your offset would be 200, which gets you 201 through number 300. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you.
Not a problem. Other questions? Alrighty, if there's nothing else, then I'd like to thank you again for attending the Ask the Admin webinar today. And if you have any further questions, feel free to reach out to us.